It's often really, really funny to watch right-wing commentators, especially, continuously on YouTube and other platforms as well, talk about how their rights are being infringed, about how the government are doing all these terrible things, taking away their rights. And yet, we have at the moment, currently going through Parliament and the House of Lords, some of the most egregious stripping of rights of British citizens we have ever seen by any government in this country. And yet, right-wing commentators or centrists, as they sometimes like to portray themselves, have said nothing about these bills, about how bad they really are, the threat that they face to British citizens. It's a potential landmine area for all this that we could be seeing in the future. So many cases around this about what the government is doing, and especially the bill that allows the Home Secretary to strip the British citizenship without warning of any citizen that they like. This is incredibly worrying for people who have dual citizenship in this country in any regards. People who maybe moved to this country and naturalized here, they could find their British citizenship just removed and then be a citizen of nowhere. This bill is so dangerous and such a deadly part of the rights of people in this country that the fact that if a right-wing news commentator doesn't talk about it, then they do not have any right to say anything about any other rights being stripped away. Because, quite frankly, if they've got nothing to say about this bill, then they have no right to ever commentate about the government being oppressive or stripping rights away from them ever again. So, we're going to jump into an article about this and how this bill is really deadly because it explains it so good. So before we do that though, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So on with this. So this comes from The Conversation with the title of Stripping British Citizenship, the government's new bill explained. A restrictive new immigration law being debated in Parliament has huge implications, not only for people seeking asylum in Britain, but also for British citizens. The Nationality and Borders Bill is now in the House of Lords for readings after passing through the House of Commons. The bill makes it a criminal offence to arrive in the UK without permission, with a maximum sentence of up to 4 years. The bill lets the UK send asylum seekers to a, quote, safe third country and can allow for offshore processing centres for overseas instead of considering their asylum claims here in the UK. In November, the Home Secretary... Priti Patel introduced a provision that would allow the government to strip people of their British citizenship without notice, which was debated for, quote, 9 minutes in the House of Commons before passage on the 8th of December. Citizenship stripping can take place for public interest reasons, mostly connected to national security and counter-terrorism. These decisions come into effect even before the appeals can actually be processed, so it is critical for the afflicted person to be notified. And the UK has had a recent significant rise in citizenship deprivations. Most have taken place when the British citizen is already overseas, so they would be unlikely to know about their cancellation orders or find it even difficult to appeal. A well-known recent case is that of Shamina Begum, who went to Syria at the age of 15 and had her citizenship removed. And in a recent judgment, the Supreme Court held that Begum could not return to the UK to challenge her deprivation order in person. While Begum had the right to a fair hearing, this right did not trump all other considerations, such as safety for the public. The British Nationality Act of 1981 requires the Secretary of State to give a person written notice and a decision to deprive them of their British citizenship before the deprivation order can be made. Clause 9 in the new bill exempts the government from giving notice if it is not reasonably practical to do so, or in the interest of national security, diplomatic relations, or otherwise in the public interest. This gives the government enormous power over British citizens who have another nationality or may have been born elsewhere. Effectively, naturalized citizens may be made stateless without notice. The government, however, claims that it will not make anyone stateless and will not affect the right to appeal. The abrupt addition of this provision is particularly concerning, as it was not mentioned in the consultations or even included in the original bill. So Patel's attempt in Clause 9 to try and take away the notice requirements does appear to be directly a reaction to the case of D4, a British citizen who was in Syria to allegedly join the Islamic State. Her citizenship was cancelled in 2019 and notice of the decision was placed on her Home Office file as per the 2018 regulation. But D4 knew nothing of the decision to deprive her of citizenship. And in July of 2021, the High Court decision was that this was not enough notice for removing citizenship. And the court found that the 2018 regulation went beyond the powers granted by Parliament with regards to serving notice. The judge considered it unlawful, a private act of putting something in a drawer and just locking it, rather than allowing and actually notifying anyone. The new Clause 9 contains the subvision that renders the provision about secret deprivations retroactive as well. So to wholly try and neutralize the effect of the court's judgment in D4. The new bill could affect an estimated 6 million Britons who were born elsewhere or have another nationality. And this provision makes these citizens far more vulnerable. And despite the government's assertion that these powers are rarely used, only against the very worst. The government claims that the vast majority of these millions of people are very unlikely to be in war areas fighting against British interests. Yet, these powers are framed widely and could indeed be used far beyond the national security emergency scenario. The citizenship stripping orders are not obtained from any court or tribunal and are entirely based on the discretion of the Home Secretary. The UK law empowers the Home Secretary to deprive nationality of British citizens who have another nationality if the Secretary deems it conducive to the public good. The Home Secretary can also deprive naturalized citizens of their citizenship, even if this results in their statelessness, and if the Home Secretary finds reasonable grounds that the person is able to become a citizen of another state. Currently, no other country can make its own citizens stateless by depriving them of citizenship without notice. The UK citizenship deprivation practice affects minorities and those of migrant heritage much more than it does white British nationals born in Britain. The Begum case has demonstrated that an appeal against deprivation orders can remain indefinitely suspended, taking away any notification requirements, and will make appeals even harder. And without this change, the deprivation laws risk alienating majority communities. But with it, the potential challenges in court will just be eliminated at the source. So this should be sending off alarm bells throughout the entire country, because at a whim, the Home Secretary could just decide, I'm taking away your citizenship. And this law does apply widely enough that this could affect minorities and immigrants and people who have second citizenship status of elsewhere. This bill is incredibly dangerous and to the rights of British citizens, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about stripping British citizenship from people who have moved here and have gone through all the rigmarole to become a British citizen, and the Home Secretary can just go, no, just like that. This is incredibly dangerous. And the fact that you have people on the right who constantly talk about, we're losing our rights, we're losing freedom of speech, etc., etc. They are remarkably quiet about this bill that could affect 6 million Britons. So this bill is indeed incredibly dangerous. And if you want to help kill this bill, then write to your MP. Write to your MP and tell them how dangerous this is. Now, of course, it is in the House of Lords, but MPs can still sort of put pressure on the House of Lords. So definitely write to your MP. And especially if this affects you, if you have dual citizenship and you live in this country, this definitely affects you, because the Home Secretary can just go, you don't have British citizenship anymore. That is incredibly worrying. Incredibly worrying. But as always, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the video. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.